Welcome back into another segment of the best here in St. Louis sports history, going 0 through 99, looking at the best athletes to wear every single jersey number in the history of sports here in St. Louis. This is STL Sports Central, and all content is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Joe Roderick, Mike Claiborne, and Claibs, we are in the 30s now, sure. Week 4 of the list, and as we kind of look at some of the names, the possible names on this list, we get our first soccer player at 30 in Slobo, a guy that I've never saw play, but I've heard plenty of stories about him. I know our good friend Jay Jr. I think was a big fan of his.
Slobo was a good candidate. I'll tell you another one that just popped up: Jacques Plante.
Mm-hmm.
Vesna Trophy winner for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah.
The father of the goalie mask. He wore number 30 in St. Louis. I'm impressed with some of the names that you come up with.
Yeah.
There's some debate on some of them that we'll get into.
And that's what we're going to do today on this episode, as we're going to stop right here at number 31. And I like this because it's, you get, when we compared Whitey and Bernie Federko, like you look at when we did that last week, you kind of look at the legacies that both of those guys have in two different sports and two different avenues of those sports, as a manager and as a player, and then what they did afterwards. But here, I mean, this is cut and dry, position for position. Two goalies for the St. Louis Blues wearing the number 31. You have Grant Fuhr and you have Curtis Joseph. Claibs, How do you go about kind of dissecting who is the best 31 in St. Louis sports history?
Well, it's a good question. You look at tour of duty, how long they were here. You look at what they were able to do as a team, where were they successful. And if they ended up being in the Hall of Fame of some sort, whether it's the Blues Hall of Fame or the National Hockey League Hall of Fame. But I think for me, Grant Fuhr played in more impactful games during his time here. Grant Fuhr has a record that'll never be broken in St. Louis. Believe he played 76 games in one season.
Oof.
Okay, think about that.
That's impressive for somebody, a non-goalie, to play 76 games in a season.
So you think about that, and I just go back to that double overtime game in Arizona where he stood on his head and the Blues ended up winning. Those sort of things stand out. Now, Curtis Joseph, you really can't say he's a schmo, because Curtis Joseph was pretty good. Problem was Curtis Joseph was not on a team where they won the big game. Throw in the fact that Curtis Joseph is probably better known for beating up Tim Shovelday in the fight. I mean, he's a really good goalie. Maybe as athletic as a goalie as we've seen in a Blues uniform, but he couldn't win the big game. He never got him to a conference final. And even you look at Grant Fuhr, the year Grant Fuhr got hurt, that might have been as good of a Blues team that we've had. And when Nick Kyprios ran him over. But Grant Fuhr was a really, really good player, Stanley Cup champion with the Edmonton Oilers.
Five championships with the Oilers.
He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So that's why I would go with Grant Fuhr.
And that's where one of the debates comes in, because we leave this up to you, especially with debates like this. We throw it out there, and we love to hear and read your comments, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, wherever it is that you see our list and you see our side-by-side comparisons of these guys, because it allows your voice to be heard, and it allows kind of us to also see how these guys are revered and for their careers in St. Louis. And this is one of those where nobody out there is debating how great of a goalie Grant Fuhr was in his career, the Hockey Hall of Famer in 2003. But I think the fans of St. Louis, and that's where this debate is, it's who's the best to wear it in St. Louis sports history. Fans love Cujo.
And, I understand them loving him. I think Grant Fuhr represented the number better. In again, the record that won't ever be broken. Grant Fuhr played in bigger games than Cujo. Grant Fuhr won bigger games than Cujo. But as you mentioned, Cujo is still a fan favorite because he made some dynamic saves. He's a really good player. I don't want to take anything away from him. He's right on the cusp to me to being in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
What, 7th most all-time wins for Cujo?
See, I think when you're in the top 10, in a category like that, I think that's Hall of Fame worthiness.
What do you think is keeping him out?
Never won anything. Never won a cup. Never got to the finals. Never knew anything. Never was in the conference final.
Mm-hmm.
Had a good run. Might have been better in Toronto than he was in St. Louis. So I think the fact that he doesn't have any hardware on his resume is the reason why he probably doesn't get more love.
You look at 2.79 goals allowed in his career, a save percentage of over 900.
Good.
Those numbers right there. I mean, better side by side. I mean, better than Grant Fuhr's when you look at them side by side too.
I think though, when you look at Fuhr's numbers, Fuhr played on a team that didn't know where their own blue line was. I mean, they were all up, and so Grant Fuhr had to stand on his head, and his goals against were up. You know, Edmonton won a lot of games 6-5, 6-4. You know, because they were only offensive minded. Curtis Joseph didn't have that pleasure. I mean, he had some guys that could score, but not in the banner that what Grant Fuhr was playing on.
Neither one ever won the Vezina Trophy either.
No, and I can understand in that era.
I was going to say that era of goalies, you had some great names in there.
You did, but like I mentioned, Grant Fuhr would never win Vezina because they were not defensive minded as a hockey organization.
When we make this list and you look at the names of the 31s, I was surprised with having, you know, you're still in the 30s, not having any Ram in there at 31, Cardinals at 31. Like, I was very, very surprised that it was just 2 hockey players. That's all that we kind of had to choose from
for just the number 31.
For just the number 31. Okay. For just the number 31.
It's kind of an odd number, though. I mean, you know, you look around sports. I mean, there aren't that many guys that stand out wearing number 31.
Right.
So that I think it's more to do with that, because it's an awkward looking number too. So I think that might be it more than anything else.
Lance Lynn did wear number 31 for his time in the Cardinals, but given the fact that you know, we're the ones making the list and we're the ones that are coming up with that, we're also able to manipulate a few things, so I can tell you that maybe later on in this series, maybe later on in this series, you might see Lance Lynn's name.
Folks,
at some point.
Other people you're going to see pop up, and you can say, well, how did I can see where this is going.
In that case,
you're kind of massaging the rules here a little bit. That's fine.
You get into the 60s and claims it gets tough. It really gets tough in some of those. I mean,
wait a minute. Who's number 60?
I'd have to go. I'll have to dig that up, and I mean, that's like 30. That's like 3 weeks from now for that. But I will tell you, one of the front runners for number 60 is a guy who closed out a World Series here in St. Louis. So it is, you know,
Bob Young? Did Bob Young wear 60 or Roger Finney?
I have one of those names on the list. People are going to have to just stick around as we go on. But there's the debate on number 31. Now it's in your hands. Let us know who you think. Grant Fuhr, Curtis Joseph. You have 2 goalies that wore the blue note and wore 31 here in St. Louis. Who's your favorite? Who's deserving of that top honor? Let us know.